Hey all, Venture Brad here, and I wanted to go over how to connect your Votol Em-150 to your computer, and I'm going to cover settings specific to stock Surron battery and motor. Um, don't use Windows things because it's hard to show you everything else. But the first thing you need to do before you do anything else, make sure you successfully, before you even start installing your Volt controller or anything, make sure you can connect to it with your computer and that everything's happy, so that way you eliminate problems in the future. So yeah, to connect to it, we're not getting into the wiring here. You'll use a stock. I recommend not cutting any of your wiring to your programming port until you're assured of that. On some controllers, they're wired wrong out of the box, and you got to swap the TX and the RX signals. Be very careful when you're doing that. That's out of the scope of this video. But anyways, you'll want to make sure that you're connect to everything. You don't need 5 volts from your computer. That wire is supposed to be cut. All you need is the common ground between them and the TX and the RX. Again, TX stocks RX, RX stocks a TX. Power your controller up by battery power. Put power to the purple wire with the green stripe on it, or excuse me, gray stripe on it. Battery power, that'll boot the controller up. If it's already installed and everything like I'm currently at right now, turn it on. Bike on, powered on, everything, plug into your USB. Make sure you're communicating to the COM port. In the description, there's a link to my build blog thread at Endless Fear. Please be very nice on that forum and respectful of it. There's a lot of good knowledge there. Don't ask stupid questions that are easily searchable. But on that link to that, there will be a set of drivers that you could use because I'm playing with Adreno and ESP and all that stuff all the time. My drivers were installed on my computer, but there's a link to drivers in there. I actually went and uninstalled all my drivers, so which is going to be a pain for projects in the future, but just for you guys, I did that and installed just the drivers that are included in the link in Endless Sphere in that build thread. Those will get you started. So make sure that you're communicating with your computer. You could always use a terminal manager or something like that. Don't blame the program. The reason why I'm covering so much on this is the program is not a lot of times the problem. The problem is you're communicating with it. So make sure that you can communicate. Your controller's all set up. Everything's able to communicate. That it's actually populating as a COM port and not unidentified. Make sure your drivers are right. Sometimes you got to spend time because Windows stupid. It likes to use Bing, but you'll have to point it to specifically where your drivers are. Yeah, it's a big pain in the butt, but that's kind of what goes with the territory on this stuff that's terminal and serial based. So anyways, I'm operating on COM5. Once it's already all plugged in, and because of the way I'm using the screen capture process, software that I'm using that's inherent to Windows, this is only you guys can only see here. My mouse just disappears, and you guys can't see anything because Windows doesn't want you to see your device drivers. But anyways, I'm on COM5, plugged in, powered up, and everything. What you want to do is once that's all done, then open up this program. Don't do that first. To get this little sidebar over here, click on this little arrow that opens this sidebar stuff up. First off, none of this will save over here. This is just all localized settings. So first thing you'll do is click open, connect it. It'll say that if it's connected to something or not. So don't just think that, oh, it's connected, that I'm bam, golden. And see, nothing's populated here. Now you'll want to connect. Now everything populated up. I'm on an EM150. Apparently it'll always just read EM100, but you can see it's populated here, and you can also see it's got a success count for cycles. So as you change and do things, or if you save settings, that will, change and update and that sort of thing. So that shows you that we are connected. So the first thing we're going to do here on page 1 is, now that we're all connected and everything's active, we could actually go over to display. You can see active voltage. My voltage is off. By screwing around with the voltmeter, I figured that if I change that to 35, again, this is, you see how that updated, like as soon as that's just the divider that they use it. I haven't figured out where you could actually save this. So my voltage does read a little bit high. initially, but anyways, here in the basic model settings on stock battery changes to 60 volts. The over voltage goes up to like 72 volts on stock. I don't like that because if you're running any sort of region settings, it'll actually try to charge your battery up to 72 volts. But if you have this set anything less, I should probably knock this up a little bit because I first had this at 67 volts, I believe, and I went to plug it in with a hot, fresh battery one day, and my bike was like, "You're going nowhere." So be careful with that. Maybe I should raise that up. Maybe 69 sounds like a good number. So let's just write that. So it'll charge on region. I don't use region anyways, but I'm just still scared of overcharging my battery. But it will throw an alarm and not let you ride your bike if your voltage is over that when you plug your battery in. There is 2 undervoltage stages, which is kind of nice. The soft undervoltage, like, just cuts your power, like the factory battery down. It's not 20%. It's more like, well, I don't know. I don't know what their percentage is here, but it's more like you're still at least a third to probably half of what stock power is. So you're not like in like limp mode. You're in limp mode, but at least like you're able to like move at 20, 25 miles an hour. You're not like 5 miles an hour just hoping to get back, kicking with a foot. So anyways, I've left this alone. Change your bus bar current if you're on a factory battery or whatever you want to be maxing it at 90. If you put this at 120, you'll do like I was doing, and you'll draw 120 amps out of your stock battery. If you're not bypassed, it won't let you do that. But if you're bypassed, it'll do that, and your battery you'll get nice and toasty. I'm sure that's not safe. This is for your voltage settings. Generally, leave all this alone unless you know what you're doing and you're setting it up like a custom throttle or something like that. This has nothing to do with the power that you'll get out of the machine. This just has to do with what is the throttle start and low. So at idle, it's reading. I don't know if this is a greater than or less than voltage, and I don't know if this is greater than or less than voltage. And same with this. So I would leave this all alone. And if you have to get into it diving because your throttle Hall effect sensor is reading high or low, you can play with that. Start torque 1. I've left this all off because I have on page 2 here, soft start rate, it disables all that stuff here if you disable soft start. So that's all that. Just leave that alone. This won't move the bike, but then again, when you first set all this up, do not have the chain hooked up or the belt hooked up or anything. And even at that, be very careful because like I've played with this bunch right now, but I'm not even going to click on it and move it right now just because my bike is live and I don't want a rocket ship in the garage. So anyways, leave all that alone. That's just better safe than sorry. It's like if you guys play mini quads, take the props off every time. It's just the same thing. It's a lot of power coming out. This is, you could touch this, and this is if you're using a sport mode, which is a burst setting setup. We'll get into that in a second. This would be the max amps you can pull. I don't do with any of that. Don't play with your field weakening values here or here. That's dangerous territory to play with, but I could definitely tell you that even on a stock battery, unbypassed, the bike goes faster. There's no speed limiters or nothing. So you don't even bypass your battery, you will get a faster bike going to the Votol. Because I don't know if the stock Surron actually had like a mile per hour limit in it, or that was the limit of just the signware software that it was. But yeah, it's the field weakening is definitely an improvement. The bike goes faster. I have this enabled. I thought that was regen, but that also has to do with some other things that I don't want to get into this video that I was messing with too. I found that works the best, and I don't notice I need a regen. I've left this alone, haven't played with it again. I only have 2 speed settings, so I have my 80% and my 100%, and I'll show you how I set that up on the stock control right now. I could probably knock that down a little bit more, but I run that's a pretty good. I run around in my eco switch most of the time. now with this new controller, just because it's plenty good, and then I don't feel like I'm kicking on my batteries, and then if I want giggles, I flip it into 100, and the thing boogies out. Um, and you could change those to whatever you want. You know, kid settings or whatever else. Again, leave field weakening alone. Um, I have it set as a 3-speed switch here. Default gear switch was to high. I should probably have it Hege. Translation is a wonderful thing. See, as we go down, you can see my success counter's gone up. It was at 22 last time I pointed it out. We're at 205. Again, soft start enabled. If you do want soft start going, for some reason, like I would kind of like to actually have soft start on a switch, um, because then that way, if you're in a situation like yesterday when I was walking the bike up a hill because I rode down something too steep and I get up. Uh, it'd be nice to have something that, didn't hit the tires as hard and you could just kind of, I don't know. That seems like it'd be kind of cool on a Switch, but digressing. The higher number here is the harder it hits on the soft start. The lower number is the less it hits on the soft start. I have no soft start. Fade Strace, Surron. You have 10-pole motor, 5-pole pairs. So set that at 5-pole pairs. If you wire everything as I did in the guides, you shouldn't have to be exchanging anything. You want to change this. Originally it was V-type. Change it to surface mount. Make sure you make that change. It has a lot to do with surface mount motors are more turkey. Has a lot to do with how the controller reacts to it. This is a whole ball game in itself, is the hull angle. So you kind of think of this as the timing of a motor, an internal combustion engine is the timing advance on it. Is the hull angle positive, an integer positive 60, so no positive number, but don't put a negative in there. If you put a negative in there, the motor will run horrible and try to go in reverse. You could set it at negative 60, positive 60, negative 120, positive 120. There's four common hull angles. From all my gathering, they're supposed to be 60 degrees positive hull angle, the Surron stock. Same with like the QS 138 motors and stuff like that. But because it's just a ring pressed onto the end of the shaft, there can be some hull angle shift, and because of magnetics and all that. And heat. If you heat the magnetic, can move the angle a little bit. So, some people, the Votol 150 doesn't have the ability to self-learn the hull angle, but people that have reported far away from this number as 53 when they've been able to learn it. If you have an oscilloscope with 2 channels, you could find it out for yourself. I don't. I only have a single channel. It really makes me want a 2-channel one now. But so anyways, start with 60. The biggest thing here is slowly, change this number, write the param, go to your display setting where it shows your amps, and slowly give it the throttle. 1, listen. You want to make sure it's taking off smoothly, and this is very critical you do the first time you touch the throttle on your bike. You could barbecue things in a hurry right now. Don't just grab the throttle and, let's see if it works. Barely touch the throttle, barely bring the current up. This should not snap over. Like right now, my bike is stopped. And if I give this, it just barely bursts the current up, just a couple of amps. And that's just not even hitting the brake, tire turn sitting on the ground. With the motor not connected the way you should be doing it initially, pulling your belt off, pulling your chain, whatever, safety, you should be getting like an amp or 2 or less. You want it to sound smooth. It should sound like a nice sound. It shouldn't sound gravelly. Like that's a bad sound. You don't want that noise. You don't want it to stutter or clog or go in the wrong direction. So be very careful of that. Danger, Will Robinson, that'll get you in trouble. Output, if you're using the DKD display and it's a non-CAN bus, like what I've recommended for all this, you want the 1 line out. If you're using a CAN bus system, you want a Hall speedometer. You want the signal to put, that's the output you want it to put out. I've left all of this alone because I don't know what it's doing. Same with this. If you want to add reverse, part of me really wants a little miniature switch panel so I can take advantage of a lot of these functions. And we're going to get into that here in a second, what you could how you could reprogram all the different functions. But I've left all this alone for now. Display, let's get that in. Let's get to the port functions. So anyways, right now, as I've told you to wire it up in the blog, PD1 is the output to the high 3-speed switch. So you could change this. I have it set at 6 high-speed switch. You could set it to null. You could set it to high-speed indicator, which would just be a light, I'm assuming. You can set all kinds of things. I had it set at park function, and all that would do is park input, I believe. Yeah, 17. It would disable the throttle, but it wouldn't actually lock up the rear wheel. I need to investigate that further. If you wanted to use the sport input here, so again, you set it to sport. Maybe you set this up. You have your bus bar setting at 90. Say you want to be on read your battery and go 110, which is the max you should do out of the stock 34 amp hour Panasonic cells. I think that's what's in the don't quote me on that one. Then you could do like a maximum burst time, and I would probably do this as like 15 or 20 seconds if you're drag racing, maybe 30, but I would definitely increase this to 120 seconds minimum if you're really being rowdy on a battery like that, unless you don't care. But if you just want a nice little burst happy button, you could do again that with your sports switch. And you could set this to kind of use the sports switch, at least set up in the blog. And then how I did it, just your sport wire there, meaning that when it grounds, you get this function. And I set it to my high speed switch as a function. I didn't set it as a switch, and it seems to work. And yeah, just write the param. Now, I've left everything else alone in here. Be careful, because there are some that if you change this to something null, it'll no longer read your input. That's why I'm not even going to write any params after I've played in this page, because I don't want to have accidentally scrolled on something to set something. And that's another good thing I should touch on right here at the beginning or before. So this is something you should do at the beginning. As soon as you connect, save your param. Save a stock param. Every time you get somewhere and everything feels good, save that param and save it as a diff. And then that way you could always import a param. So say you get in here, you screw something up, you don't know what you did, you could go back in and import a previous param and save it. The one big caution here is there is one of these settings in here that if you go in and change it, I'm not sure which one it is. I think it's this one. Yeah, I can't read it all, but if you go in there and change the input, because you can do that. All these are just all the wires coming into the controller, including your programming RX wire. So meaning the receive wire on the programming. So if you go in here and you save one of these bad boys and you change the input wire to something else and save it, you have just bricked your controller, because there's no longer, well, you haven't bricked it. If all the functions are still set where you want it, the controller will continue to work, depending on which one you just screwed up, but you will no longer be able to connect to it. So danger, Will Robinson, like I said, I would only, unless you're an advanced user, only hook up the 3-speed sport high, or the high input for the 3-speed to your sport wire, meaning when you flip the sport to sport mode from eco, it grounds that wire out. When you flip it to eco, that circuit goes open. So that lets it change. And so what happens is, like right now, I'm in low gear because my switch is in eco. If I flip to high, oh, did we change something? I'm afraid we changed something. So let me close, let me disconnect. Say I told you. And a lot of times it's going to want you disconnected and this to close for it to reconnect. But let's see if it just does. Back on. Open terminal. Says connected, connect. Okay, so we're getting an abnormal response. So if I exit all this out, we're going to close it. Oh, dang it. I really wanted to be able to show you this, guys. But anyways, oh, yeah, okay. So if I'm an idiot, it's not happening here. It's happening here. So because I have it set to medium, uh, it's just the two speed switches. Uh, it's just going from medium to high. So I'm on eco right now, and I'm on high here. And this shows you this screen. You can't click none of these settings will change. This is kind of the last point I wanted to cover. None of these settings you could save into here. It's kind of like here. This shows you what's going on. A lot of times you'll connect, not a lot, but occasionally you'll connect and you'll get this controller failure um, indication popped up. Just lightly move your throttle. That'll go away. And I think it shows up as a 200 or a 20 code or something like that. Again, this is all in Fahrenheit. Um, yeah, so, and this is all your live data. So like, again, if I just touch the throttle here, the throttle moves. I don't know how to set the zero or baseline. As soon as I figure out how to dive deeper into that, I'll add it into this video. So it actually sits at a zeroed and not a negative current use, because actually the current's up a little bit because it's running the processor and the controller right now. So anyways, and I think that's it. Looking at my list here, I think we've covered everything you wanted to do. And then when you want to disconnect, you should always close the connection out, and then pull the USB plug and all that, close your program down. But again, save a parameter at the beginning. That way you have something to default back to. Be careful with what changes you do and what you save and that sort of thing. Don't get yourself bound into a corner or any of that. And besides that, yeah, connect, ride, be cautious in the programming. This is Wild West software here. There's no padded walls. So yeah, again, be careful, but it's fun, and you save a lot of money, and you get a really awesome controller. But I'm really digging the Votol. Glad I did. Stay tuned for a display video, because you can't do any programming for the display in here. It just kicks out one line signal out. Anyways, y'all, have a good day now.